Welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be doing some analysis of some sentences. Really, it's going to be grammatical analysis. We're going to break down all the parts of speech. We're going to break down the sentences into clauses, and we're going to just look at the grammar of a very simple book called Roald Dahl's The Witches. When I was a boy, this was one of my favourite books, I must admit. And I read it again recently, or not very recently, but about a year ago to my son, and I read it a few years ago to my daughter, or we read it together anyway. And I still like it. I still think it's a good book. Let's just look at the language, though. We're not going to be judging the content today, just the language, just the grammar of the language. And I want to show you how you can find out if a word is a verb or a noun or an adjective or an adverb. So if we look at the first sentence, and I hope you can see what I'm going to put on the video later, which is the first page, we have the first chapter, which is a note about witches, and it starts with the sentence, in fairy tales, comma, witches always wear silly black hats and black cloaks, comma, and they ride on broomsticks. Now, let's discuss the first comma first of all. Before the comma, we have the words in fairy tales. Now, if you look up in on Oxford Dictionary, as I'm just about to do, you will see the word preposition straight away under in. Now, it's not the only thing in can be. In can also be an adverb. And I have to say, when prepositions are adverbs at the same time, I find it very difficult to see the difference between a preposition and an adverb, because they very often make phrasal verbs, which is a verb and a preposition, like give up smoking, turn on the light, or breeze in the room. If you breeze into the room, that's also a phrasal verb, breeze in or breeze into. So when the preposition is in a phrasal verb, you could call it an adverb or you could call it a preposition, and so that's a special case, but that's not what we have here. We just have in fairy tales. So this is definitely a preposition. And with prepositional phrases, if they come in the middle of the sentence or at the end of the sentence, usually you don't need a comma. But if they come right at the beginning of the sentence, before the main clause, and the main clause starts with the word witches, then we need a comma to offset the prepositional phrase. Oxford Style Guide actually say that if it's only two words, it's not necessary. You can or you can't. You can or you don't, but you don't have to. Yeah, it's your choice. But here, Roald Dahl has chosen to use a comma after the prepositional phrase. So remember that prepositional phrases are offset with commas when they come at the beginning, but not in the middle and not at the end of the main clause, but at the beginning, yes. So in fairy tales, comma, witches always wear silly black hats. Now let's just look at each word there. Witches, they are a type of person. They're the name of a person. Okay, it's a supernatural being, but it's like a person. And I know it's a noun because you can only add an S on nouns and make them many, yeah? You can add an S on a verb, but when you say I play, he plays, it doesn't make the many plays. It's not like there's many Shakespeare plays, yeah? When you add S to the noun a play, for example, 2 Shakespeare plays, that is acceptable, and that would show you that a Shakespeare play is definitely a noun. But here we have witches. It's definitely a noun. You have 1 witch, 2 witches, 3 witches. This shows me that it's a noun, that it can't be a verb. We don't say I witch, I am witching, he is witching, he has been witching, or to witch. And so that's the way you test them. Can you put this word into different tenses? If you can't, it's not a verb. If you can put an A before it and you can say 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, it usually means it's a noun. It's not the only way of testing for a noun. There are other tests, and there are some nouns where that test won't work because some nouns are uncountable and some nouns are countable. Witches is countable, and I know that because it's got an S on the end. And uncountable nouns, you can't put an S on the end. So you can't say monies, not in normal everyday English. Maybe in legal English or banking English, perhaps. But in everyday English, you don't say, I will send you the monies tomorrow. You say, I will send you the money tomorrow. So money is another noun, but it's an uncountable noun. Witches is countable. And then we have the word always, and then we have the word where, and then we have silly black hats. Now, I hope everybody can see that silly black hats are... The silly refers to the hat and the black refers to the hat. So black is describing the hat, silly is describing the hat. This means that they're words which are describing a noun, and so they must be adjectives. The word hat is obviously a noun. I know that again because I can say one hat, two hats, three hats. It's obviously a noun. Now, a lot of students might ask me, why hasn't he put a comma between silly and black hats, black and silly hats? Well, obviously he wants the black hat to be a classifying adjective. Black here is being a classifying adjective, and that's why he has done without the comma. I suppose witches always wear black hats. Yeah, you picture them with the silly black hat, and so he has considered that you can't swap these around. You can't say black and silly. You need to say silly and black hat. You need to say silly. They're not and. It's just silly black hat, and that's why we don't have the comma here. The adjectives are not coordinate adjectives. Okay, where. Now I know this is a verb here in this sentence because it's witches wear hats, and you should know that all English sentences go subject, verb, object. Now, of course, they're not only 3 words long, all English sentences. Sometimes the subject can be many words. Sometimes the verb, when it's in present perfect tense, it will be have been wearing. So the verb could be 3 words. And the object can certainly be 6 or 7 words. So don't think I'm saying that every English sentence has only 3 words. I'm not. I'm saying that it always has a subject, a verb, and an object in any main clause. Participle clauses are different, and so other types of clauses are slightly different, but a main clause will have subject, verb, object, or maybe just subject, verb, because some verbs are intransitive, which means that the verb doesn't take an object. For example, we broke down, full stop. Yeah, we broke down yesterday. Something like that. Broke down then doesn't have an object. It's just we broke down. You can say it like that. Just like you can say I know. You don't need to say what you know. You don't need to say I know that. You can just say I know. So it's an intransitive verb. So witches always wear silly black hats. We know wear is a verb because we can say I wear, to wear, he is wearing, she has been wearing, she will be wearing, she was wearing, she had been wearing. It works in all of these different tenses, and it works because it's a verb. Only verbs will do that. Only verbs will be possible to change in all of the 12 tenses in English. So if you use that test, you'll know for certain whether it's a verb or not. Now, the word always here is actually an adverb. It's an adverb telling us how frequently something happens. So it's telling us how frequently the wearing happens. So it's modifying the verb wear. Always is referring to the verb wear. How often do witches wear silly black hats? They always wear silly black hats. So adverbs of frequency are like always, often, sometimes, never, rarely, seldom. Those are all adverbs because they tell you how often a verb happens. But there are many other adverbs. Many adverbs end in ly. That's something you really want to memorize because that will help you identify adverbs much faster. And adverbs are the most complex part of speech because an adverb can modify. An adjective only modifies a noun. Yeah, a silly hat, a black hat, a big hat, a small hat. But an adverb can do all sorts of things. Adverbs modify other adjectives. They modify, for example, seriously injured. Adverbs modify other adverbs. For example, incredibly often. Incredibly is an adverb. Often is an adverb, so incredibly often. I had to think for a while to get that one. But adverbs can also modify the whole sentence when you say something like indeed, furthermore, however. Unfortunately, you'll often have a comma after that adverb because it's a sentence adverb. It refers to the whole sentence, and that's another thing which adverbs can modify. So adverbs are a pain. They're much more complex than the other parts of speech. Anyway, always is an adverb. So we've got in fairy tales, we've got preposition in, and prepositions are always followed by nouns. A fairy tale is a noun. Anything which you can put an A in front of is a noun. A fairy tale, a hat, a witch. So in fairy tales, we've got preposition and then plural noun, comma. Witches, plural noun. Always, adverb. Where, verb. Silly and black are both adjectives. I mean, the black is referring to the hat and the silly is referring to the black hat. And that's why there's no comma, because silly refers to black hat as a unit and not silly's referring to hat and black is referring to hat. That's what Roald Dahl has chosen to do, but I think he could have used a comma if he wanted to say that the hat was silly and it was black. And black cloaks. Now, he hasn't used a comma here because we've just got two elements in the list. We've got a silly black hat and we've got a black cloak. So there are only two elements in the list. You don't need a comma. However, after black cloak, adjective noun, after black cloaks, he does have a comma. And he has a comma because what we have here is and, but it's being used in a different way than the previous and. The previous and was joining two nouns together. And we can join verbs together, we can join nouns together, we can join adverbs together. However, this second and is joining the first main clause, which is always wear silly black hats and black cloaks, to the second main clause, and they ride on broomsticks. There's the second main clause. They ride on broomsticks can stand on its own. And so whenever you have main clause being joined to another main clause by a coordinating conjunction, there are 7 coordinating conjunctions. Fanboys is the word you want to remember. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. None of them are long. They're all 3 or 2 letters. So when you have a coordinating conjunction joining 2 main clauses, you will have a comma before that coordinating conjunction and. So you can see that and is joining 2 main clauses, and the second main clause, they ride on broomsticks. Subject, they, which is a pronoun, it refers to a group of people. Ride, which is the verb ride in the plural form. It's in the plural form because we say they ride. But we say he rides, she rides, one person rides, but many people ride. It's present simple if you're interested in the tense, but I'm not going to talk so much about tenses today because I'm more interested in clauses and parts of speech today. And they ride on preposition, broomsticks, noun. Prepositions are usually followed by noun, nearly always followed by noun. They might be followed by an a or a the, in the garden or on the fence. But notice that it's the fence, the garden, they're nouns. So prepositions are usually followed by nouns. Okay, we've done the first sentence, and you can see how much you can take out of one single sentence of English. You can take a lot of grammar out of there. There's a lot of different grammar you can actually talk about. And you can see that Roald Dahl has obeyed all of the grammar rules that are prescribed online, especially for using commas. So he's behaving at the moment. I don't think he always does this. I think quite often I see sentences which are questionable in their use of commas. But here it's all fine. Okay, on to the next sentence. But this is not a fairy tale. Now, the first thing to notice here is that he starts with one of the coordinating conjunctions. He starts a sentence with but. So if your teacher told you at school that you can't start a sentence with but or because or and, you need to point out that people do in books which are published by Penguin, Oxford, Cambridge, and so if it's a mistake, why is everybody doing it? Everybody does it, and I'm sure I'm starting a sentence with and I'm sure that we will come across some more that start with and, but, because. And this is because everybody does this. There's nothing wrong with starting a sentence with a coordinating conjunction, and Roald Dahl thinks there's nothing wrong either. So, but this is not a fairy tale. This is about real witches. So here we've got a determiner, this. This is a determiner. I suppose you could even call it a pronoun because it's functioning in place of a noun phrase. It means this story is not a fairy tale. But yeah, it can be used as a pronoun or a determiner. Determiners identify and specify, and so do pronouns, and that's why I don't see much difference between the two. It identifies this story is not a fairy tale. This stands for this story. The word is the verb to be, conjugated, and a fairy tale is a noun. It must be a noun because we can say a fairy tale. We have this, meaning this story is about real witches. So this is a pronoun, is a verb, about is a preposition, and then we have real witches. Real is describing the witches, so real is an adjective. You could have a real witch, you could have a fake witch, you could have a make-believe witch, in which case all of those words before which are describing the witch, and so they are adjectives. So this is about real witches. I won't talk about the capitalization in the book because I think you could all understand why he's decided to do that. He's emphasizing that this is about real witches and not about those fake witches in stories about the supernatural. Okay, next sentence. The most important thing you should know about real witches is this. So the most important thing. Here I can tell you that thing is the noun, the thing. What kind of thing? The most important thing. So important is an adjective describing thing, and the most is an intensifier. In fact, technically it's a superlative. When you say the biggest, the best, the smallest, the most important, the most interesting, you're using a superlative construction. So this is a superlative, the most important thing. That you should know about real witches is this. Now, this is how I break down a sentence like this one. This is quite a complex sentence. The most important thing that, and they've omitted that, Roald Dahl's omitted it, and of course you can, but technically this is a defining relative clause. The most important thing that you should know about witches is this. So here we have subject, verb, object, but the subject of the verb is, it's a lot of words. It's the most important thing that you need to know about witches. 11 words is the subject of the sentence, and we call that a noun phrase. All of that phrase is being used like a noun. The most important thing that you should know about witches is the subject of the sentence. It's the noun that is being operated on by the verb, that is doing the verb. So the most important thing that you should know about witches, subject, is verb, this, object. And the pronoun this, it's referring to what he's about to say. The next thing is this. So the most important thing, you, is a pronoun. You must know, that you must know. Should is a particular type of verb. There are several different types of verbs in English, but let's say you have ordinary verbs, and an ordinary verb you can put it into all sorts of different tenses. I play, I am playing, I was playing, I had been playing, I had played, I have been playing. There are 12. So there are lots of tenses you can use with ordinary verbs. But with this verb, should, you can't do that. You can't say I am shoulding, I have been shoulding. Impossible. And you don't say he shoulds, even though you say he plays, he studies, he goes, he does, he should. And it's the same for all other modal verbs. This is a modal verb. Very quickly, modal verbs are could, should, would, might, must, may, will, can. So these are the main modal verbs, and it's good to be aware of them because they're a different type of verb. They don't function exactly the same as other verbs. They are a subclass of auxiliary verbs, which means verbs that help to make tense, and they help to make questions and negatives as well. The three main auxiliary verbs are do, be and have. But there are many modal verbs as well, and they are also auxiliary verbs. They're used to help construct meaning, and that's what auxiliary means, helper verbs. They help construct meaning, but they're not the main verb. So modal verbs are always followed by the main verb in the infinitive. Can play, should play, must play, would play, could play, will play. And here, should know. You should know. You must know. So we have you, pronoun, modal verb, and then main verb in the infinitive. And then we have about, which is a preposition. You should know about real witches. Okay, next sentence. Listen very carefully. Now notice there's no pronoun here. There's no subject, you might say, in this sentence. Where's the subject? I told you about subject, verb, object. Well, this is a little different, and that's why I can't say it's always subject, verb, object. This is an imperative. Imperatives are when you say things like go, wait, stop. It's when you use a verb as an order. And here we're saying listen very carefully, yeah? Watch out for whatever. Watch out for cars if you're crossing the road. Watch out is an imperative. And that's how the verb listen is being used here, and that's why there's no pronoun here. We've just got listen in imperative very carefully. And there we've got an adverb, very, also known as an intensifier because it makes it more intense. We've got the adverb very modifying the adverb carefully. And I know it's an adverb immediately because I see ly, and I think it's not one of those weird words that ends in ly but is actually an adjective. And it's not, because the adjective of carefully is careful. Yeah, he is careful, I am careful, but he works carefully. Carefully is modifying the verb. He speaks very carefully if he's careful with his words. He is careful with his words, adjective, or he speaks very carefully, very cautiously. And notice that usually you make the adverb taking the adjective cautious, add ly, cautiously. Take the adjective careful, add ly, carefully. So listen very carefully is just imperative plus modifying adverb plus adverb, very carefully. Okay, next sentence. Never forget what is coming next. And again, we have an imperative. Never forget. Not you mustn't forget, which would be pronoun, modal verb, main verb. Here we have never forget. The never is an adverb of frequency. I know that because I told you about always, sometimes, never. Yeah, and so when we say never forget, never is an adverb modifying forget. It means at no time. You must never forget. At no time, and at no time. You might call it a prepositional phrase, but technically it's an adverbial phrase. At no time did I study means I have never studied, and never is modifying study. At no time is modifying study. So I could say at no time did I study grammar at school. It's almost correct. I don't think we ever studied any grammar, and I'm sure that many of you out there also never studied any grammar. But it doesn't matter. There's plenty. It's actually fairly easy to get to grips with this as an adult, and it's very useful when you're looking at writing and analysing it and thinking about all the different ways you can express yourself. So never forget what is coming next. So here we have never forget, an imperative, and then what we mustn't forget, the object of the verb forget, which is what is coming next. So again, notice that we can use a noun phrase in the object position. Just like we used a noun phrase in the subject position, the most important thing that you should know is about which is. And here we have a noun phrase in the object position. Never forget what is coming next. Never forget that. Never forget what is coming next. So yeah, you can have many words for subject and many words for object. So we have the next part, and we'll finish after we've just done these next two sentences. But I hope it's given you an idea about commas, pronouns, adverbs, how you can take any sentence and rip it apart grammatically and look at all the different parts of speech and analyse exactly what function each word has in a sentence. So the next part, real witches dress in ordinary clothes. Let's just hold it there. Real witches, we've got adjective and noun. Dress, they dress, I am dressing, he is dressing, he has been dressing. Clearly it's being used as a verb here in the plural form because we've got witches. Witches dress, how do they dress? In ordinary clothes. Preposition in, ordinary, adjective describing clothes, and clothes, which is always a plural noun. Some nouns are always plural, like clothes. So you say my clothes are, you can't say my clothe is. And that's the same with a few other words, like jeans are always plural, glasses are always plural, if you mean spectacles, which are also always plural. Okay, real witches dress in ordinary clothes and look very much like ordinary women. Now notice here there's no comma before the and I think Roald has made the right decision because we don't have a main clause after and. Look very much like ordinary women is not a main clause. If we wanted to make it a main clause, we would need to add the subject of the verb. The subject of the verb at the moment is real witches. It's at the start of the first main clause. And because we haven't put it in again in the second clause, the second clause remains subordinate. It's just a list of two things. It's real witches dress, blah, 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 and look, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a list of two elements, a list of two verbs, and you do not need a comma. However, if you put the real witches in the second clause, real witches dress in ordinary clothes and real witches look very much like ordinary women, then you would need a comma, definitely, before the coordinating conjunction and, because then you have main clause, comma, fanboys, main clause, which is one of the comma rules. Okay, look at the next part. They live in ordinary houses and they work in ordinary jobs. So here, I'm not so happy with Roald, because here I think Roald Dahl should actually have used a comma before the coordinating conjunction and. They live in ordinary houses, comma, and they work in ordinary jobs, because he's put the pronoun in, the second main clause. And this is why I say that Roald doesn't always follow the comma rules. I've noticed that he's nowhere near as strict as most of the other books I'm reading for kids nowadays. The other books are stricter. I think Roald obviously felt like he had more artistic license. Perhaps he thought that with the repetition of ordinary houses, ordinary jobs, that he didn't need a comma, that it was quite clear that he just wanted it as two. He didn't want to split them up. He wanted them closer together. So there's always artistic license, but still, I would have used a comma there just because I teach grammar, and so I want other people to follow that rule and not to forget that rule. Okay, for the last sentence, that is why they are so hard to catch. So here we have that is, and then again we've got subject, verb, object, but the object is a number of different words. It's why they are so hard to catch. That is the reason why they are so hard to catch. That's basically the idea we've got here. We've got that we're giving a reason. That is the reason why they are so hard to catch. So a number of words being used as a noun phrase again, and very often you see that in the subject or object position. And we've got that, which again is a determiner or a pronoun. This and that are a little bit like he, she, it. They refer to some other noun, and that's why pronouns are called pronouns. They refer to other nouns. Okay, that's a lot of grammar talk just using the witches, but I'll use some other books in order to take apart sentences and try and show you that you can always analyse each and every word and each and every mark or punctuation or anything like that. You can analyse them and see exactly how the clauses are working, what the function is of each part of speech. Okay, thanks everybody for listening for today. Sorry if you've been waiting for a class and there hasn't been any for about a month. I've just been very busy for the last month, and so I haven't had time, unfortunately, to make a new class. Anyway, there will be plenty more coming, plenty more of literary analysis, grammar analysis, sentence analysis, and so please like the video if you've enjoyed the lesson, subscribe, and I hope to see you all soon.